The Mermaid's Legacy by Sims4Lizzie UK, Gen 0, Chapter 1. For many generations, Sapphire Shores had been home to the Costa family. It was a large family home in Sulani, on the island of Lani St. Taz, a quiet and friendly community perfect for a family of mermaids like the Costas. Whenever they went into the water, they would transform into mermaids and feel at one with the sea, needing to stay hydrated to stay alive. There were 5 current residents at Sapphire Shores: Maleko Costa, his sister Leilani, his wife Iolana, and their 2 children. They were a nice family who treated everyone with kindness and respect, and the rest of the community knew it. Iolana Costa was a beautiful young mermaid with blonde hair and a carefree smile. She was very creative and artistic, and it felt like she'd been a part of the Costa family long before she married Maleko. Her parents weren't originally from Sulani, but they'd moved there after they got married, and it was where Iolana was born and had grown up. The community of Lani St. Taz had welcomed Iolana as they had her parents, with open arms, and she felt strongly that it was her home, and she could never imagine living anywhere else. Leilani Costa loved art just like Iolana did, and she had a great sense of humour. When she and Maleko were children, they'd always had a shared sense of adventure as well, and they loved exploring the islands. She worked as a conservationist, hoping to preserve the natural beauty of the islands and all the fascinating ecosystems there. Leilani may have teased them a lot, but she loved her brother and his wife, and one day she hoped to find the woman with whom she could have a relationship just like Maleko and Iolana's. Since the passing of their parents, Maleko Costa was the official owner of Sapphire Shores. He was a sweet, kind-hearted young man with a head full of dreams and a heart full of love. He worked as a marine biologist, as he loved the ocean wildlife and was very dedicated to working with them and understanding them. Family was very important to Maleko, and he also had a romantic side. The islands were his home, and he loved it there, and more than anything else he was happy. All he wanted was a life with the woman he loved in his island home where he could raise his family. Maleko had been in love with Iolana since they were very young. She'd been his childhood sweetheart, and he'd known she was the one for him since the day he met her. They'd married young and started a family, and he still loved her every bit as much as he had as a teenager. Sulani was also the place where Maleko and Iolana had fallen in love, kissing in the lagoon, running around on the beach, and holding hands as they climbed up the volcano. Maleko was utterly enamoured with her, and they both felt so fortunate to have found each other. Maleko, Iolana, and Leilani had been very close since they were children, and all 3 were glad that they'd maintained that closeness now, as adults. Maleko and Iolana had been living in a smaller house with the children, and Leilani had been away to study conservation, but since the recent passing of Maleko and Leilani's parents, they'd all moved back to Sapphire Shores, and they were all so happy to be home. For to all of them, Sapphire Shores was the place that was home. Maleko and Iolana were very glad to be able to raise their children there, and Leilani had decided to stay as well. There was more than enough space, after all. Maleko and Iolana's 2 children were called Keone and Kailani Costa. Keone loved the water, and although he hadn't come of age and got his merform yet, he spent almost all of his time outside in the ocean. He was quite popular at school, but then again, everyone was really. It was a small school, and there weren't a lot of students, and they all got on very well, and Keone was the closest to Tana Nyata. Little Kailani was a very sweet little girl, and all the family adored her. Keone was very close with his little sister, and he loved playing with her. Keone always made sure he made time for Kailani, and she admired her big brother a lot. Leilani also had an aquazip, and she loved riding around on it, feeling the waves rushing up to meet her. Anything in the water the Costa family loved. The ocean was like their second home. One of Leilani's favourite pastimes was riding around on the aquazip and just enjoying the world around her, feeling like nothing in the world could hold her back. Even with the loss of their parents, Maleko and Leilani were coping well. They'd known it was coming, and they'd passed on peacefully. Maleko and Leilani had grieved for their parents, and they would miss them a lot, but they were glad that they could live in Sapphire Shores and honour their parents' memory as much as possible. Maleko loved being a dad. He was so proud of his 2 kids, and even though he was busy with work, he loved spending time with them, and Kailani was always excited to see her daddy when he came home from work. He found it so fulfilling to be a parent, and it was very important to him that he looked out for his family and that they were all happy, which they were, all the time. During the day, when Maleko and Leilani were at work and Keone was at school, It was Iolana that stayed at home with Kailani. She decided when they'd had Keone that she didn't want to work. She could always do some odd jobs around the islands, but Maleko made good money and she wanted to be there with her children. She loved taking Kailani to the water's edge where she could play in the waves under Iolana's careful supervision, and she loved seeing how happy it made Kailani to be in the water. Kailani also loved making sandcastles, which Iolana was more than happy to do with her. Whatever strolled across Kailani's imagination, Iolana would help her to build it in the sand, and she would shriek with laughter. It was a perfect life. Iolana never felt like she wanted a job. She was passionate about music, but she didn't know if she'd have a lot of success in that industry anyway. She was perfectly happy to just stay at home with Kailani and do whatever she wanted to do. There was also plenty of time to just relax and listen to the waves going in and out, look at the sun shining on the sea. Iolana loved to sunbathe, just basking in the glory of the place where she lived and taking it all in. The Costa family all felt, for the most part, like they had everything they wanted. Iolana and Maleko were excited to watch their children grow up and see who they would become, because they were growing fast. Life was short after all. Of course, basking in the sun's rays, Iolana ended up with quite a tan. She was always careful not to burn, though. She hoped she'd discovered the knack to that, and she knew, when it was time to come out of the sun, an important skill in Sulani. Living in Sapphire shores again, Iolana, Maleko and Leilani just wanted to spend time with the community and watch their children grow up. They had their jobs and they had each other, and they had the beautiful islands of Sulani, and that was enough. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of the Mermaid Legacy. I absolutely love the story that's to come, and I love these Sims, these mermaids. I think Sulani is so beautiful. Island living is one of my favourite packs, and I'm really looking forward to sharing the story with you. It's called Gen Zero, this bit, because Maleko, Iolana and Leilani, their stories kind of already happened. They're kind of happy and have the kids and stuff. The kids, Keone and Kailani, will be Gen 1. I just thought it would be nice to watch them grow up. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to sharing the next chapter of the story.